So here you are watching a video about how to make better videos. Turns out that it's not that tricky. We spoke to a whole bunch of experts and found out that the secret is to focus. We started out by asking a few of our experts why video is good for IBM.
You should be thinking about video whenever you're trying to communicate, which is everything we do in marketing and communications, right? It's good for everything we do. It's good for workforce enablement, good for field enablement, good for brand, good for demand. And the reality is that we're moving away from a world that's dominated by the written word and towards a world, or back to a world that's dominated by storytelling and video, right?
In general, so in Australia there's 14 million people online. Last month 10 million of those people watch video online, so whether they're C-suite executives or consumers or anybody else, there's a good chance they're watching video. So I wouldn't get too caught up by job title because C-suite executives are just like everybody else.
If you look at content just being streamed online, I believe they predict by 2013 that something like 90%, over 90% of the content that's streamed online is going to be video content.
It is a great way of delivering authentic advocacy. So people obviously don't pay as much attention to ads as they have in the past. What they are interested in finding out more about is what their peers think of certain things. And video is a fantastic way of getting that message out there quickly and in a realistic, authentic manner.
I think that video is one of the few assets that we have that we can use that actually takes someone completely through the entire purchase funnel. Video is fantastic at delivering that initial brand experience and often enables us to tell a complex story in a quick and an efficient manner, and it gives that emotional connection as well. However, video is also a very good tool to take us down the purchase funnel and explaining products in detail, which enables us to get to the lead generation point of the process.
Clearly, most people think video is awesome, but there's a critical part of the process that a lot of people miss, and that's planning and strategy.
I think like with most things, if you don't understand where it is that you want to go and where you're starting from, you're never going to get very far. And so I would normally say that if you don't have a clear set of objectives, you're never going to have a particularly good piece of communication. Equally, if you're doing a video, it's unlikely that you're going to have a great video if you don't understand the objectives that you're starting with.
Plan early. Be strategic about it. Ensure that, as I said, it's based as a campaign plan. It's not a tactic that stands alone, and it's not a tactic that's an add-on at the end of the campaign because you've produced something you then want to put it into media. It needs to be thought about up front so that it takes the right look and feel, it takes the right campaign and brand approach, that it's the right thing to do for the audience group.
Assume that there will be a larger audience for it than what you originally planned. If you are putting a person in front of a camera in particular to talk about some products and services, if you're filming an event where someone is speaking, assume that this will go far and wide, a lot further and wider than what you originally planned. So thus, put in a level of production that's going to accommodate that. This is something that you might have planned just to use in social media post-event, but in fact it might be something that someone likes and would like to show at another event. Obviously the quality that we need to show that on a large screen at an event is far greater than what we need to show through YouTube or something like that.
Integrate with the other demand programs teams. If your program doesn't have the budget to produce strong videos that could be used in advertising, you probably could if you integrated with the other teams.
Planning that needs to be done is in getting the message right. The message needs to inspire. It needs to inspire the viewer to think. It needs to inspire them to act and to be, forward-looking.
You need to be really conscious about how it's going to be repurposed. So you'll have requests from the seller community about having a 30-second version of it, a 2-minute version of it, a 10-minute version of it. So being able to repurpose it, I think, when you're first developing your ideas and planning for the video itself, you need to be really cognizant of how it can be deployed more broadly.
In terms of what we're seeing in search results, you're going to see a lot more, I believe they call it Ogilvy stimulated search content, which is content that's available on social channels or through owned and earned media. And video is going to play a large part in that. So you can very easily dominate, and IBM has done this for some of its products, and our competitors do it as well. But dominating in video search, I believe YouTube is probably the second biggest search engine. So if you look at how we can actually dominate in that space, particularly if our competitors aren't active around a particular product or offering, we can really leverage video to get those high rankings.
We also discovered that the best way to think about making a video is to think about telling a story.
It's a natural storytelling way of doing something. It's a natural way of getting across your message in a compelling way to people. Again, as interesting as writing something is, it's never as interesting or as compelling or as engaging as actually watching somebody tell something to you, describing what they want to do or what they want to say or what they've done.
I think that it also helps to make it more humanised. It brings a person to the picture, and having that individual explain the story and take you through that journey really helps to explain all the different elements to even a very complex situation.
One of the biggest things that we need to consider, and this is true across IBM, is just the language and what we use in communicating with our audience. So starting with really understanding what our audience is saying about our products and how they're looking for them, and reflecting that in our content, because I think we tend to speak very much from the inside out. So talking about IBM solutions is very using a lot of IBM speak, and something I am guilty of the longer I work on the account. So by then doing keyword research, customer intent modeling, and really understanding what our audience is talking about, we can feed that into our communication. So that should form the basis for all the content development. But it is also something that informs the tagging of the content. So when we send it out there, people are actually able to find it.
Absolutely, the IBM is at the centre of a number of our initiatives. So why wouldn't we put them in the middle of our videos as well? The IBM is often the expert, and that's why we're being brought into a number of really complex situations with our clients, is because they want to hear from us, and there's that knowledge transfer. So it makes sense to incorporate the IBM as part of that.
One of the best ways of thinking about planning for video is to think about what you want to have happen at the exact moment your piece of video content finishes. What's the call to action? What's the logical next step for the audience that's consuming your video content? Work backwards from that outcome, and you'll find your storytelling works in a much more logical and cohesive manner.
And John Awatta put it really, really well a few weeks ago. He said there are videos for distribution for clients, and there are videos for sharing. And I think the video forum that we're all struggling with is that videos for sharing. They have to be authentic. They don't have to be perfect. I would say that scripts, aren't necessary. It's all about the credibility of the speaker at the end of the day.
One of the biggest impacts that the rise of video has had on us as marketers and advertisers is a shift in thinking away from traditional communications and towards publishing and broadcasting models. So I asked Ben Edwards what 15 years in the publishing and broadcasting world had taught him about communications.
The first thing you got to understand is I could be saying anything coming out of my mouth here. I could be saying anything I like, right? What you're focused on is me. My body language, what I'm doing with my hands, you're looking at my eyes, right? And you're looking at my countenance, and you're trying to figure out, do I trust this guy? Do I have a connection with this guy, right? That is effective human-to-human communication, right? The words, they're just 30% of it.
I think we definitely need to look at a broadcast model for digital. I think, you need to think through the sound bites. You need to know what it is that the audience is looking for. You need to understand how to pique their interest. So all of that really needs some careful consideration, as opposed to just getting your, marketing message through. You need to think through how you can have an immediacy of impact. So that broadcast hat is the one that you need to be wearing when you're doing digital work.
Don't overproduce it. Don't introduce gimmicks or, flashy graphics when you don't need to. right? Go back to that human-to-human communication. What the audience will be looking for when they're watching that video is they want to see that expert, right? And they want to see them engaged in conversation and expressing their expertise about a topic, right? It's pretty simple. It's like line them up nicely on the camera, not too far away, you know, so people can see their face, and get an interesting set of questions for them, right? Which will mean doing some research on the topic and finding something else about the topic. You can ask them about it, ask them the questions, and get them engaged in conversation around that topic. Out of that will come some great video.
You don't need the budget of Spielberg, for example, to make great video content. Even your average smartphone has got a more than acceptable video camera in it, but there's a few tips and a few basic rules that you should follow if you want to get watchable quality out of your production.
I think the most important thing is to make sure they're comfortable. Ask them a lot of questions, find out a bit about them. When you get to know the person on a bit more of a personal level at first, they relax a bit more. But the talent is critical. Making sure that they're aware of the fact that they are going to be filmed if it's something where the camera's just in the room. Making sure that their presentation is suitable for what this use is. Making sure we get their PowerPoint afterwards, you know, is obviously important. But for situations where we're filming someone specifically to use at an event, so we might have a customer, we're going to interview them in their office situation, and then that video will be shown at an event. It's really making sure we've got the right person in front of the camera here. Obviously, A, are they qualified to talk about the subject, but B, have they got that level of engagement? Are they going to work well on camera? Are they going to be believable? And then also, who are we going to get to interview them? Are we just going to film them straight? Are we going to have someone there to talk with them? Are we going to have an IBMer or maybe a third-party person to do those interviews? Sometimes I don't get the best answer from a person, and so I'll rephrase, I'll kind of take on something that they said that they might have led up to. You can see it, you can often see in their eyes something that they're really comfortable with. And you pick up on that, and then you just ask that question again with a little bit more of a slant towards that, and then they go off running on that idea. It's just super important for us to really get to know the content, to get to know the speaker beforehand. Often the agency, we don't get the opportunity to do that. It's an IBMer, as I say, who might be flown in for the event.
Always check on who the talent is. See if they've produced any video before, maybe they've got something on YouTube, but maybe some presentations. Find out from them themselves if they're comfortable being filmed, if they've done it before. And if you can, meet them in person, have a chat with them and find out a little bit about their personality. You want to keep it to a bare minimum. Only the camera person and the producer, if anything, they can have someone watching over if they're not comfortable. We always put a sign outside the door, just quiet please, filming. In terms of the room that you set them up in, everyone gets a bit confronted by a dark room that's just a bit bare, and so if you do have time to dress the room a bit, whether you can just, whenever we're on a shoot, we're scrambling around trying to find props to put in the background. So whether it's a pot of flowers, a chair, a vase, you know, turn the window just slightly so you see a bit of light on the outside. It brings life to the room.
I would say the most important thing to do when you're making a video is to ensure that you're making a video that you would actually watch. The second most important thing when making a video is to ensure that the audio quality is really good, because your video is only as good as the audio.
When you're setting up for an environment that isn't ideal, you've really got to kind of, if you can, just run around quickly and see where's the best corner of the room. What's important to always think about is lighting. Very first thing in terms of video, obviously, it's how much light is in the camera. If you're in a dark spot, it's not going to help an engaging video.
Live locations are obviously more challenging than anywhere else. If you can make the person feel comfortable when we're interviewing them, if we can choose an area which has got some level of lighting so we can actually see the person and brighten it up to a level where it's going to look acceptable. Radio mics so we can hear them properly and we're not picking up too much background noise. If ever there's the option, think about it in advance, find a room on the side if there is one, There are some occasions you might be able to get the talent before the event, get a room in IBM, get a room anywhere, which is all you need is 10 foot square and you can video someone.
My philosophy is usually to do another take that they think that the pressure's off, that we've got everything. I always say, great, we've got everything we need, just in case we need one more, just say that again. And they thought, great, well I've already done it, so let's just give it another shot, and it always comes out great. So I think asking basic questions first, make sure that you're not throwing them in the deep end straight away. You're saying, just walk in slowly, we can start off with as comfortable as you like, and then as they get more comfortable, a bit more laid back, you can start hitting them with the questions, especially when they're leading in, when you can get hints of things that they want to talk about within those little questions is when you can really roll on to ask stuff that you might not necessarily ask who you plan to ask.
Now, I'm no fan of auto cue. I don't think it does great things for authenticity, trust and believability. But it's not just my opinion. Let's ask the experts.
I think the problem with having an auto cue is it somewhat dehumanizes the person. They sort of become this face, this screen of information. And I think the powerful thing about video is that you really you see the human there, and you see them talking, you see their views, as opposed to print where it's just written text and you don't really get a sense of who the person is.
For a lot of these people, they feel like they have to present to a script even though they haven't got a script. Let them ad lib and let us do the work afterwards. Let us do some editing, edit out some of the things that we don't want to hear, but get the real good sound bites from them. And once they relax, a lot of the times they're fine.
You've got to be careful about the length, right?
Yep.
So
I'm sorry, that's all we have time for.
we're done.
Yeah. Really great thing about video is the production requirements, particularly of web video, mean that you can spend most of what is a relatively modest budget on extraneous travel to completely irrelevant overseas locations. And that about wraps it up for part 1 of Focus, the guide to making killer videos. Stay tuned for part 2. We'll take you through some of the popular formats and how they work in paid, owned and earned. See you there.